Today I'm going to show you how I make homemade chicken soup. This is a yummy grandma food. I'll probably say that several times in the making of this movie. That's what I think about with homemade chicken soup. It's absolutely delicious, comfort food, food for when you're sick, but also it's what your kids will want on a Friday night. It's delicious and satisfying. It is definitely a meal and a bowl. Let's get started. You start with the chicken. I just use a whole chicken, put it into a pot, fill it with water, and then I add probably 2 tablespoons of black peppercorns. I add 2 bay leaves. Yeah, then you bring the chicken to the boil, to a boil, cover it while it's cooking, and I cook mine probably 25 to 30 minutes until it registers done, which is 165. Yeah, so when the chicken's done, you remove it from the hot water and leave the chicken broth in the pan. Remove it from the pan and let it cool. It takes quite a while because the chicken gets very hot, and if you try to take the meat off too soon, you'll burn your fingers. It's really hard. I have tried in the past and it doesn't go so well. So I leave mine out probably an hour or hour and a half to let it cool off. I typically will slit the skin to let it vent a bit before I try to take the chicken meat off. After you remove the chicken from the water, you'll also want to strain the broth to get the bay leaves out as well as all the peppercorns. While your chicken is cooling, you can start on your vegetables. Peel and chop up 1 onion, a few carrots. I usually use somewhere between 2 and 4 carrots. Peel them and chop them into little rounds, and then 2 to 3 stalks of celery. Once the chicken has cooled, take all of the chicken off the bone and tear it into bite-sized pieces. Add the onion, carrot, and celery to the broth and bring it up to a boil. Now you may choose to use a bit more broth than what you have left over from cooking your chicken. If you have it, you could certainly use bone broth, and I'll link up above how I make my bone broth. But you can also just use chicken stock from the store. I usually use low sodium broth because that's what I prefer to use. So you'll cook the vegetables in the broth once you put them in for just a few minutes. If you let them go too far before you put the noodles in, they'll get mushy and then it doesn't taste as good. So I cook my vegetables for maybe about 10 minutes and then I add my noodles. My preference are these Mrs. Miller's noodles. I like these because they taste homemade. They're a bit thicker than what you may get in your grocery store. I'm in the Pacific Northwest and I buy them at Winco. They're maybe a little bit more expensive, but they're absolutely delicious. And like I said, they taste homemade. So these Mrs. Miller's noodles cook a bit, they take a little bit longer to cook because they're thick. If you use just regular noodles from the grocery store, your cooking time will be shorter. So you could let the vegetables cook a bit longer before you add the noodles if you use a traditional thin noodle from the grocery store, if that makes sense. After the noodles are tender, you add your chicken back in. It will almost immediately come up to temperature, and then you serve. Such a simple food. You can absolutely serve it by itself. On the night I made this for my family, I also made homemade biscuits. I'm happy to share with you how I do homemade biscuits if that's of interest to you. But I made, it's just the recipe from the Betty Crocker cookbook. They're nothing fancy. But people were very, very happy to eat homemade biscuits and homemade chicken soup. Okay. This is, I probably say this about a lot of soups because I do feel like this about soups, which is probably why I serve it to company so frequently. This is grandma soup, meaning it is sick person soup, comfort food. I would totally feed this to my kids when they came home. It's what I want if I don't feel well, but it is also absolutely, Sorry, my dog is whining in the background because he wants in the kitchen because I'm making chicken soup. I mean, duh. Anyway, like I was saying, grandma food, so good, so deeply nourishing. It's so good. I hope you found this video helpful. I'll link above the video where I show you how to make bone broth, homemade chicken stock from scratch. Anyway, we will see you next time. Thanks for watching.